Traveling the Vortex.
We've joined Doctor Who as he travels through space and time and arrive at episode number 291. We will never obey motorized dustbins. I'm Keith.
Twitch. I'm Sean.
I won't jump the gun this week and pretend that he said I'm Twitch like I did last week. I'm Glenn.
How are you guys?
Twitchy.
I didn't realize that until I listened back. You said I'm Keith. He said I'm twitching, and I said I'm Glenn. We never let him introduce himself, so new listeners have no idea who he is until this week.
He's twitching.
I think that's going to be my new shtick. I don't think I will introduce myself. I think I'm just going to be a different name every week.
Describing your emotion or your state of mind or your state of...
I'm angry. How come? I can't see my forehead.
My dad does that to the new Starbucks employees. Gives them a new name every time he goes in.
Like your dad.
He thinks it's a hoot.
Why not? Turnabout's fair play.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter.
Depends on the employee. Sometimes it's their third time. They're like, well, hey, wait a minute. Weren't you so-and-so yesterday?
Why do you do that? Doesn't matter. They won't get it right anyway.
That too.
That was mean. My apologies to any Starbucks employees out there.
Did you guys do anything fun this week?
I did.
What'd you do, Sean?
I watched Bat Soup.
Both versions?
Yes. I watched it twice.
So 5 hours worth of bat soup?
Yeah.
Or longer?
Back to back.
6 hours? That was fun.
Yeah, well, you can find out more on our side trip, which we apparently have put out.
Or will come out.
Or
Wibbly wobbly, timey-wimey, you know.
It's either out now or will be coming soon.
Hopefully this show will release before the side trip does. But
if you have an interest in our thoughts on Batman versus Superman Dawn of Justice, or as I like to call it, Bat Soup, you can hear them on the side trip.
Sean finally got a chance to see Bat Soup. Keith and I had already seen it, so Sean decided to regale us with his reviews. So, what else did you do? Anything else?
What else did I do?
That's a lot to do.
That was 5 hours. I am in somewhere in season 5 of Clone Wars. I watched some of that, and we watched another movie, but for the life of me, I don't remember what it was, so I'm not going to talk about it. We played a lot of Pokemon Go. Took over my first gym.
Oh. Hey, good job.
And then lost it pretty promptly. But
yeah, I put out an alert to Team Valor to take that one down real quick. I've been playing a lot of Pokemon Go. Where have you been?
He's red.
Oh, I thought you both were blue.
No.
Yeah, I'm blue. He's red. I got kind of strong-armed into blue because everybody else I know is blue, except for Glenn. And Arissa.
That's because he's a follower.
You're green. I am a follower. No, we looked at all kinds of different things, like, you know, what's your favorite color? What's this? What's that? Yeah, I'm looking at trainer silhouettes going, ooh. And the yellow is instinct, and it's all about evolving Pokemon. And blue is intelligence, and red is strength. That's how they justify it in-game. And Mel and I kind of thought about it. I was like,
well, even
we like to think that we're more intelligence than the others. So
Valor's more of the headstrong, diehard. I liked Chrissy's post on Facebook, though, comparing it to the different houses. And Valor was Gryffindor, and Mystic was Ravenclaw, and Instinct was Hufflepuff.
and all the haters.
And then it said Slytherin was all the haters of Pokemon Go.
So that makes you a Slytherin house.
I'm not a hater.
He's not a hater, though.
But you're not
I'm
playing.
not playing, so I guess
you got sorted in the Slytherin.
Yeah.
You're one of those unfortunates that didn't really want to be there, but the sorting hat went, eh.
I'm on level 23 now.
Oh, very nice.
23. I'm
17.
I got a little boost because I did the old collect. I had a bunch of lucky eggs. I had a couple of lures, and so I set up my Pokestop last night and at work because I had to work overnight and I had nothing to do, and launched the lucky eggs because you get double XP, and of course evolving gets you the most experience. And so what I did is all week long I just saved up all these different Pokemon that I had, the highest CP ones that I had, but all of these different, Pidgeys and Rattatas and Weedles and Carpies and all these little stuff you don't even use. And I just saved up candy, and then I sat down and did a mass evolve, and it literally took me 3 lucky eggs to evolve everything that I had. So that's about an hour and a half worth of evolving. I watched the first 2 episodes of Stranger Things.
What do you think of it?
I like... No. The problem is that as I've only watched 2 episodes is the problem. Ultimately, what it's come down to is it's an interesting story, and I am enjoying it. And the best thing about it is it's set in the 1980s, and it's done in that very early 1980s style of filmmaking. So that has been a wonderful welcome for me, especially at my age. I don't feel like the story's driving itself along well enough, though. I'm interested in what's happening, but I'm wanting them to get somewhere. And again, I'm only 2 episodes in, but there's only 6 or 8. 8 episodes, I think. And so I don't know where I can't really come down and say, hey, this is a great series. It's a lot of times I start a series and I go, these are fantastic. I'm not at that, these are fantastic level, but I'm enjoying what they're doing so far with it. So
Okay.
I think that's it. I didn't really watch anything else. I finished season 5 of Skins. Kind of picked back up on that recently.
Did you watch any more Newsroom?
Oh, that was the other thing. You were supposed to remind me. Actually, I haven't, but I did watch the first 2 episodes of it so far. So I have started Newsroom, and I'm quite enjoying it. That was one where I watched the first one and went, wow, this is a great series. Of course, I knew it was going to be because everybody said it was a great series.
Yeah.
But anything else?
I watched...
We haven't
got to
talked
Keith
about
yet.
anything,
I finished The Leftover Season 2, and it was phenomenal. Oh, I can't wait for Season 3. And I think it's because of Damon Lindelof. The things I liked about Lost is because of him. The things I wasn't as pleased with was Carlton Cuse. I haven't seen Bates Motel, so I can't speak to that, but he did Strain, and I still haven't picked up Season 2 yet. So, we did go see Beyond. Star Trek Beyond. We really enjoyed it.
And he wasn't part of that.
And he wasn't.
Rest my case.
It felt like Star Trek.
See, that makes me happy.
Yeah, it's not without its flaws or without its issues, but its strongest point is they get to be a team. Everyone gets something great to do, and it's well balanced, and they get to work together to solve this problem. The end is kind of odd, and the beginning is a little, where is this coming from? But the rest is really good. And then I also watched 10 Cloverfield Lane.
Ooh, and?
That was really good too. It's no Cloverfield for me, but it's one of those movies that you watch it and it's sometimes uncomfortable. And
I've heard a lot of people use that word to describe it. It's like, how was it? It was really good. It was uncomfortable to watch.
Well, I mean, it's a cast of 3 people in this bunker for almost the whole time, and you really start questioning Howard. John Goodman's character, and because you totally are on the side of this woman, and then something happens, and you kind of go, well, maybe he's not, and then something else happens, and you go, well, maybe he is, and it's just you never really know for sure if he's this bad guy or if he's actually saving her life, and it's tense. Maybe tense is a better word than uncomfortable, because it's just so he's quick to anger sometimes, and it's just so, I don't know what's going to happen next, and then things kind of go off the rails in a really, really well done way.
All right, shall we move on to news?
Yeah. The Lethbridge Stewart folks over at Candy Jar Books have announced that there will be another short story coming out called The Plain Dead, written by a newcomer, Adrian Sherlock. The synopsis is, Lieutenant Bishop has survived a dangerous mission in Australia and is looking forward to going home, but he wakes up to find the streets of Darwin are empty. He seems to be the last man on Earth, until from the shadows comes a strange creature. The dead are walking, and they want Bishop. But Bishop has more to worry about than just himself. Where is Anne Travers?
Ooh.
Don't do it.
So this one comes with, I believe, Grandfather Infestation. I know it's set after Grandfather Infestation, so it might be coming with the book after that. Because there is no short story between, which one we're reading right now? Showstoppers and Grandfather Infestation. This one follows that, if I remember. If I read that correctly.
Huh.
Nope.
Oh.
There'll be one after.
Andy, what are you doing, man? You're confusing me. You can't pull the rug out from under simpletons like me. you can't establish a pattern and then take it away. No, I'm sure
it comes with Grandfather Infestation, so it just is set after the fact.
It's not like you're not getting a short story with Grandfather.
No. The short stories are great because the short stories are. I mean, it's a bonus content anyway. You know, it's not like I've come to expect it, but I've come to expect it.
Our next bit of news.
We should mention. I want to bring this up because we talked a little bit about Day of the Triffids one week, and somebody said something about Night of the Triffids, and I was surprised that there was actually a Night of the Triffids. And Andy did message us this week and tell us that... No, I can't find it. Oh, because I got all this Friday Night Who stuff ahead of it. Simon Clarke's book is actually on BBC Radio 4 right now. And when Simon actually messaged us and said, yeah, it's on there for another 8 days. That was a few days ago. So if you want a chance to listen to the audiobook version of Night of the Triffids, which was written by Simon Clarke, be sure and go there and listen because you'll be able to get
it. Where do we go?
BBC Radio 4.
BBC Radio 4.
Yeah, so we'll...
and you'll include a link in the show notes?
Yeah, I'll actually
that would be
do
cool.
that. It'll be easy to track down. But thanks, Andy, for the heads up on that. Thanks, Simon, for letting us know that it's still going to be there. So,
yeah.
And I'm going to truck off and make sure I get to listen to it before it drops off there because I love the movie Day of the Triffids. I've never read Day of the Triffids. Obviously, I've never read Night of the Triffids, but I love the movie, and so now I want to read or listen to the book. So.
Yeah. This bit of news is kind of odd, but kind of neat. If you got £2,000, you could buy a life-size replica of Dalek Sec. It's on the auction block.
Which one was Dalek Sec?
The black one. From Season 2, Army of Ghosts and Doomsday.
Okay. But,
Evolution of the
black
Daleks.
One in the Cult of Scar.
Which one went nuts?
That was Dalek Khan.
That was Khan, okay.
Sec was the one that evolved, right?
Well, I guess that's my next question. Is it a Dalek or is it a guy in a suit with a funny rubber head?
No, it's
which model am I kidding?
The Dalek.
No, it's the Dalek.
It's the Dalek.
Yeah.
Comes apart in like 3 different pieces.
I would totally buy that if I had £2,000. I do not have £2,000. We could go together.
That would be pretty impressive,
right? Let's £2,000 split 3 ways. In U.S. dollars.
Well, now it's cheaper because
see, now's the time to do it.
Pound is tanking. All right, what do they do? They're
Thanks, Brexit.
What's the transfer rate now? $1.45 against the U.S. dollar, somewhere around there. $1.50.
While Glenn looks that up, Keith, continue to tell me.
I'm going to look it up. I don't have it either way.
If you cast,
I don't even have it a third of that.
Just go to Google.
I don't even have a third of that,
just
so it doesn't make any difference whether we can split it 3 ways or not. I'm not putting my money into it.
If you cast your mind back a couple of weeks, we had the dumb rumor of Matt Smith returning as the Doctor, unregenerating or whatever.
That rumor.
He recently talked to The Guardian, and they asked him about it. He said, no, it's not true. I miss everything. I miss Stephen. I miss Karen. I miss Arthur. I miss Jenna. I miss time traveling, and I miss my friends in Cardiff. But onward goes the march. It's Peter's TARDIS now, and I love what he does, so I watch as a fan. So there you go. Nail in coffin. If you see it on Facebook, squash it.
So basically, we read that so we could say, told you so.
Yep, pretty much. And then our last bit of news.
This just in. Traveling the Vortex was right.
Our last bit of news is a convention guest announcement. At Kansas City Comic Con coming up in August, Julian Glover is going to be there.
I was so excited to see that. Because he was at Galley this year, and I was really lamenting the fact that, John Hurt, but come on, Julian Glover. And I wasn't
It's
there.
going to be really
hard
to choose. Well, that was just a
choose
twist of the dagger when they said Julian Glover.
It really was.
It's going to be really hard to choose which picture to get an autograph from.
Let's do a collage.
What's the hard choice?
Well, because you could do Donovan or Veers.
You could.
But then you got either, say his name again.
Scaramanga.
Or King Richard the Lionheart.
No, I do either.
I
would do a collage of Richard and Scaramanga.
Yeah, that would be a good one.
Am I saying that right, Scaramanga? That doesn't sound right
that
now.
Doesn't sound
that sounds
right.
like Man with the Golden Gun.
Count Yeah, that you're right. Count Scariagli. It's scary ugly because he's got a thing on his face. Scaramanga is Man with the Golden Gun.
Yeah, Man with the Golden Gun. That's what I'm thinking of.
Scaroff.
And he was not in that, but he was in For Your Eyes Only.
Scarlioni?
Scarlioni?
Scarlioni.
Count Scarlioni.
Yes.
Who was a Scaroff.
Scarlioni.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Scaroff. Scarlioni. Yeah, Scarlioni.
Green-faced dude.
That's the one. Yes, him.
And more Game of Thrones viewers will know him as Grandmaster Pycelle.
Is he doing...
I almost spoiled that.
Is there a reason why he's doing
I don't know.
Conventions now?
He's been doing conventions for a while.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, he was at Galley earlier this year.
That's it for news.
All right. Let's move on to feedback.
In feedback, we have Holly. She says, Daleks in Disguise, Part 2. Hey guys, I have to say that I enjoyed both Dalek movies, though I think the Invasion movie might rank just a little bit higher than the first. I mean, you have Bernard Cribbins as a companion in this one. So cool years later that he actually becomes our beloved Wilfred Mott in the series proper. The scenes with the human Daleks were interesting and just slightly better than the Daleks Take Manhattan ones. Plus, the going undercover as a human-controlled Dalek had me chuckling. Just do what they do and you should be just fine. An enjoyable romp. A little bit of housekeeping before I wrap up. Voting is going on for August Goodreads Book Choice. Still have some time left to make your vote. Holly from Wisconsin.
Thank you, Holly.
Thank you, Holly.
So go vote and see what you want to read for August. Up next in feedback, we are going to read Eric's Royal Blood review.
Last month's book review. Am I saying that correctly? Last month's book for the book club was Royal Blood, and we said we were going to get around to it, and Eric had sent some feedback on it, so we've decided we're going to get to it. And so here's Eric's review. The entire time I was reading Royal Blood by Una McCormack, I kept changing my mind about it. While I never found it boring at any point, I'm also not sure I loved it. Initially, I found the author's choice to switch between the first and third person perspective to be an odd choice, but I suppose we should throw out the spoiler flag at this point too. If you haven't read it, we're going to talk a little bit about Royal Blood, which was last month's book club book. That's why I went to say that. Sorry, Eric. Let me get back here. Switch between first and third person perspective to be an odd choice, but I adjusted to it and even embraced it after only a short way in. The characters in the story are intriguing and fairly well realized, the story unique, an alien planet historical, and honestly, by the halfway point, I was convinced that I was really going to like this book. Unfortunately, in comes the third act, and the intrusion of the Glamour, in the form of Lancelot, and I can't help but feel that this was the whole portion of the story was forced in to make this story the introduction to the Glamour Chronicles trilogy. It didn't feel organic to me, like perhaps this was a narrative that McCormack had already worked out, and at the publisher's suggestion that it be added to the Glamour Chronicles, it was tweaked to include the Lancelot Grail Glamour subplot. I don't know if anyone would agree, but I think the story could have stood on its own without any of the third act as it was written. However, I suppose that would have made it a historical of sorts, by being that most of the sci-fi elements would have disappeared. It still would have had the destructive technology that was eating away at Varuz. It would have been a more powerful ending to have the Doctor and Bernhardt have made the discovery as the main plot device of a third act instead of what I'm dubbing the Glamour insert. McCormack spends most of this novel very effectively building toward the climax when Conrad's forces will finally invade the lands of Varuz, and I feel like the Lancelot plot just steals the story's thunder, and tying up all of the plot lines seems a bit rushed and doesn't have the impact it should have. But what do I know? The number of novels I've written still stands at 0. All of that griping aside, I still give this book a 3-star rating because at the end of the day it was an enjoyable read and kept the pages turning. So I would say that I liked the book. However, I cannot say I loved it, as it was just too badly flawed to end up on my hypothetical favorite shelf. I'm going to put this to the Goodreads discussion. I'm going to post this to the Goodreads discussions page as well, just in case you start reading it there and thinking, this sounds rather familiar. That's all for now. I'll be more touch often. Hope you guys have a great week, and thanks for doing what you do, and thanks for taking the time to read this. Eric.
Thank you, Eric.
Thank you, Eric. And I'm going to go ahead and read out real quick Amanda's review from the Goodreads thread. I thought Royal Blood was pretty good, especially compared to Big Bang Generation, which I thought was kind of boring and all over the place. I like the compulsive following and obsession of the Knights, and the remnants of technology was very cool. All told, though, it was so madcap, I half expected the Scooby Gang to show up and unmask everyone. Most of the story was a bit dull, and the ending of the Knights was hyper bizarre.
Well, I think we've decided, I think we've kind of landed on how we're going to do some of these book club books. I think what we're going to do is each of us, each week or each month, is going to perhaps choose one. And I drew the short straw this month. And we're going to do a little mini review on the show. And so it won't be everybody's perspective on the book because Keith and Sean have not read it yet. But I did get it in this week, and I'm going to do a little mini review here. And won't go on too long, but...
The Grail is a story, a myth. It doesn't exist on your world. It can't exist here. The city-state of Varuz is failing. Duke Aurelian is the last of his line. His capital is crumbling, and the armies of his enemy, Duke Conrad, are poised beyond the mountains to invade. Aurelian is preparing to gamble everything on one last battle. So when a holy man, the Doctor, comes to Varuz from beyond the mountains, Aurelian asks for his blessing in the war. But all is not what it seems in Varuz. The city guards have lasers for swords, and the halls are lit by electric candlelight. Aurelian's beloved wife, Gwenna, and his most trusted knight, Bernhardt, seem to be plotting to overthrow their duke, and Clara finds herself drawn into their intrigue. Will the Doctor stop Aurelian from going to war? Will Clara's involvement in the plot against the Duke be discovered? Why is Conrad's ambassador so nervous? And who are the ancient, wary knights who arrive in Varuz claiming to be on a quest for the Holy Grail?
I kind of land somewhere maybe in the middle of those two because it sounds like Eric liked it, except for he felt like the Glamour thing was kind of shoehorned in, which I kind of see his point of that. And I think Amanda was she really, really liked it, but she didn't like Deep Time, which I think is weird because...
Oh, she didn't like Big Bang.
Oh, she didn't like Big Bang. Okay, that's fine then. Because I was going to say, coming to it, having read the end of this trilogy, which is Deep Time, I completely loved Deep Time and have not read Big Bang, so I don't know anything about it. This was a strange story because it sets up really intriguing because when they sit down on this planet, they're in the land of Varuz, and they come across this city that has basically... technology that shouldn't exist here. So you kind of get the impression that there may be kind of a society that might be in the Middle Ages at this point, but they have lights, they have laser swords, they have things, and you find out later that they have these things, but they don't know basically how they work or how they were constructed or anything. And so there's this real mystery set up, and it's kind of intriguing that we've got this Duke who is basically the kingdom is on its last legs. It's about to go to war. It's crumbling around them, and there's a man named Conrad on the other side of the mountain, and he's about to invade because this will be the last area that he's been able to vanquish. And the story kind of trundles along for the most part, and is just interesting enough to keep you going. But there doesn't seem to be a lot happening, and it's kind of convoluted on what's going on here, and the mystery's almost held on almost a little too long. But it goes along and it kind of explains itself, and we know Conrad's coming. We know that the Duchess wants the Duke to kind of secede and say, give up. We know we're at our end. And the Duke is this real, headstrong, no, we're going to hold Ruse and we're going to fight to the very end. And then we've got Bernard, who's this, they've been great friends for years and years, he and Illyrian, the Duke. And they've been great friends for years, but he also has, you can tell maybe a behind-the-scenes relationship with Gwenna, which is the Duchess. But they are both pulling for some sort of concessions with Conrad in order to keep the kingdom from basically being conquested. But it really does it all kind of trundles along until Lancelot and his knights show up seeking the Holy Grail. And it's at that point that you're like, and the really cool part about this story is every time somebody questions, could the Holy Grail be real? Could Lancelot be real? The Doctor goes into robot of Sherwood mode. It's just a story. It's just a story. It's not. He's really adamant every single time, and I really kind of like the fact his adamancy of no, and he's very much in line with the 12th Doctor. Clara ends up being kind of this unwilling spy for Gwenna, and again, the story kind of just trundles along until Lancelot shows up, and then it seems to go off the rails because Lancelot's crew starts to enamor the Duke, who then sends his best knights, who should be there to defend Varuse, off on the quest with Lancelot to find the Holy Grail. And the Doctor and Bernhard, who basically are subject to banishment because of the fact that they were behind the Duke's back, kind of working against his ambitions, end up going with Lancelot, and you find a little bit about Lancelot, but the big climactic ending, which I don't want to give away, is sort of kind of what Eric was talking about, how it really kind of feels like there's not enough developed with what Lancelot and his group are, what they're going for, and why the Glamour is suddenly just seems to be crushed into the middle of what seems to be kind of a coherent story. And it does, by the time you almost think that it's a big part of the plot once Lancelot shows up. But once Lancelot is dispatched and his knights go away, we're suddenly back into this the real crux of the story, the mystery of this technology that's behind it, and then you're behind the city of Varuse, or the land of Varuse. And it really does, now that he says that, it feels like it's just kind of shoved in there. Like maybe he had this story, and they said, well, we want to be it to be the first part of this Glamour Chronicles, and they give it to him, and he goes, okay, well, I have to figure a way to put it in, and he does. And they never really kind of quasi-explain why Lancelot and the knights show up, but they don't give you a real good definitive explanation for why it's Lancelot of the Arthurian legend. And you'd think I would be all over this because I love the Arthurian tales. I love that story. But for them just to show up on this, it's very clear that it's a different planet. It's not modern day Earth. It is someplace completely different. And they just show up, and it is the Lancelot from the Arthurian legend, and it is the Knights of the Round Table. You assume you never name any of the other knights, but
and do they have lightning swords?
They do not. They do not. They're just basically they're basic knights, and it's kind of interesting that they kind of most of the time they leave their helmets on, and the Doctor's thinking, okay, so they must be mechanical, so he scans them, and they're not mechanical. They're actual life forms and stuff. But the Doctor's got to unravel this mystery. Who is this? This really can't be Lancelot. This really can't be the Knights of the Round Table. And they kind of go down that path, but they never really... The Doctor's curiosity is never really satisfied, and he almost gives I presume it could be this, by the end of it, which I thought it felt very un-12th Doctor-like. The Doctor wants to unravel a mystery. He's going to figure it out at the very end. Now, fortunately, he has another mystery that he's working on, and that's this technology that is far advanced to these people's means, and he does figure that out. So I suppose maybe he's satisfied in that sense that he did get to figure something out. But the Glamour plays into this one really weird and really forced, and so I would have to agree with that. But I think I ended up giving it 2 stars on Goodreads. I think I wanted to give it 2.5, but you can't. because it's not a terrible story. It's just one of those ones that feels like it should have been something more, and it should have given me more enjoyment, and didn't feel like it was just kind of trundling along. The excitement does happen when Lancelot shows up, but that story is so forced and thin that it doesn't give any substance to the rest of the story that's built around it. There is an interesting story surrounding Mikhail, who is the Duke and Duchess's nephew, and he was supposed to get the throne, but they felt that he probably couldn't handle it because at the time that his father or his grandfather died, he was very, very young. So that's why Aurelian takes the throne. Well, when it's discovered that he is part of the plot behind the king or behind the Duke and basically really all he wants to do is talk to Conrad and concede to his commands so that they don't end up being vanquished. And Aurelian is so, he's so taken aback by the fact that nobody's supporting him that he banishes Mikhail. Mikhail ends up joining Conrad's army. So, yeah, and then we've got, I've already forgotten his name because it's the most interesting. Imphil, who is this guy who's just randomly shows up. He's a collector, and he's looking for something there, but he doesn't really know what it is. And then he discovers when he goes there that he thinks maybe it's the Holy Grail. And you find out that the Holy Grail is really the Glamour. There's no Grail, that they've been chasing the Glamour the whole time. And he's almost a vehicle for Clara in order to do what she's doing within this, which is to leave the land of Varus, infiltrate Conrad's camp in order to give it a message to him that the Duchess really wants surrender. But he is an interesting character that doesn't feel like he's developed enough because you don't get a lot of backstory other than he's a collector and he just really likes things. And it sets him up as this guy that knows a lot about everything. But the things that he doesn't know a lot about, he goes exploring and he collects or barters or buys, and he's mistaken as an ambassador for Conrad's crew, which the Doctor and Clara are mistaken for as well in the beginning of this story. But his character isn't explored enough, I think, for this story. So it's just all kind of middles along and isn't the best 12th Doctor and Clara story, but it's okay. So that's my mini review. I think I come in underneath Amanda. So
who's one of the reviews said that it switches from first person to third person.
That's the other interesting thing. I'm glad you brought that up because I keyed on that too.
Yeah, Eric said that.
The third person, first person switch is odd because the first person narrative is from Bernard. And I liked the way that the author does that. And in fact, if this whole story had been told from Bernard's point of view, it would have worked a lot better. Because it's kind of laid out in the beginning from Bernard telling this story that you really know what's going to end up. Maybe that's why it middles along, because you know what Varus's fate is. You know what's going to happen to this land. Because he's telling the story as the only one left, essentially. And so it's really neat to do that. But unfortunately, when the author decides he has to split up our characters, Bernard is at one location and Clara's at another. So whenever we go to Clara's story or whatever Clara's doing, it's switched to the third person narrative. And so it doesn't quite gel because you've got this kind of neat telling of this Middle Ages type character who is associating things to the reader in the way that he understands things, and that's neat. But then when Clara goes away, you get the third-person narrative, and it doesn't take away from what's going on. It doesn't necessarily... It tells the story maybe in a slightly different way because it's third person, but it doesn't work because you continue to go back and forth, and you almost want all of one or all of the other. And so I think that might have been their problem with it as well. Well, I don't. Who was it that said... Eric, yeah. So maybe Eric had a problem with the switch. I don't remember what you said. I do remember him bringing it up.
He said he thought it was going to be a problem, but he adapted.
And I think you do. And I didn't think it worked well, but it wasn't. It didn't get in my way, obviously, because it didn't. I didn't bring it up until at the end. But it was an interesting way to tell a story.
So, do you think your enjoyment of the book would have changed not having read Deep Time first and coming at it backwards from the end of knowing what the Glamour is already?
I sort of thought of that, but I think that Deep Time doesn't really if Deep Time had done a better job of establishing, it seems like the Glamour is an afterthought in the whole arc of that story as well, which I came to that thinking that as well. Now, I think the Glamour is better explored in Deep Time, and it really does become the crux of the story in a way, but never really fully. There's no solid foundation for the Glamour. We still get kind of it discussed in esoteric terms, and so while this kind of does the same thing, but does feel more shoehorned in. It's almost like the Glamour was a goal for Deep Time, because it really is, but it's really this species that's been entrapped, and that was the crux of it. So maybe that's why I think it feels like it's shoehorned in. If I had not read Deep Time and known where they were going to with it and what the Glamour actually ends up being, perhaps I would have enjoyed this a little better. But again, the story itself is interesting enough that it didn't need the Glamour. So it kind of tears away from what I think the author is trying to do there. So I don't know how to answer your question, because I don't think the Glamour was explained well enough what it was in order for it to be more concrete in Deep Time, because we had this whole other sub-story going on. And the Glamour was what was the driving force, and that's what drove the crazy guy that didn't like his mom at the end. But when it's finally divulged what the Glamour is, we still kind of get a superficial answer to what the Glamour is. And so the Glamour is still sort of a superficial object or being or entity in this story as well. So it didn't feel any different as far as that goes.
Okay.
We just know that the Glamour is something that everybody wants. That's their greatest desire.
Setting
and they don't
the
know
mystery.
why. I strongly encourage you guys to read it. I don't think I've given away... I mean, I've spoiled a lot of it, but I don't think I've given away especially kind of the nugget as to why the technology is really the MacGuffin of it. Why is this technology there, and what is it? And there's a lot more to do with it that I haven't talked about that I thought was interesting, was a fascinating piece of the story, which makes it a little better, which is why it isn't a stinker, because while it trundles along, it does have a lot of interesting aspects. So I encourage you guys to get around to reading it sometime. And it does have me intrigued enough to go on now, because I feel like I have a missing piece of the trilogy to read The Big Bang Generation, because I kind of feel like now I need to see... I've read the bookends. Let's find out what the substance in the middle is.
For what it's worth, Patrick Kavanaugh Sproul on what is this, DoctorWhoTV.co.uk, briefly, his review kind of came in right at the same level. He gave it an 8 out of 10 and said it's clear that Royal Blood aspires to be bigger and bolder, but with such a short space to tell a story, it can't afford to be as complex as it would like to be.
I think
kind of
maybe
sounds like
that's probably what it is. It really it's an interesting concept, but it maybe feels a little confined, and maybe it's even more so confined if indeed the author was required to add the Glamour aspect to it. Then you kind of narrow the scope of the story again. So.
Yeah.
Well, I'm intrigued. I will say that, but I'm kind of with you. I enjoy Arthurian legend stuff, so maybe that's my. I'll have a date night with myself. I'll read this and then go see Guy Ritchie's King Arthur when it comes out.
There you go.
All right, shall we move on to Daleks Invasion Earth, 2150 AD? Did I get right?
You did.
Did you happen to watch the trailer?
I did. Yeah.
Okay.
The Earth of 2150 AD is a desolate and hostile ruin of a planet, crumbling at the edge of civilization, slowly disappearing into darkness of space. For the future of a planet Earth now belongs to the Daleks, a destructive army of alien invaders who have turned the human race into cowering slaves. Meanwhile, deep within the London underground, a group of resistance freedom fighters are planning an attack. But there's only one man who could possibly help them succeed in destroying their extraterrestrial enemies and take back control of planet Earth. A man of mystery, a man of time and space, a man known only as the Doctor.
What?
That's what this says.
Really?
It should say only as a man known as Doctor Who.
Yeah.
I thought you saw me tense up and change it.
That was a misguided
I didn't change it, though.
There. That's a misdirection, I think.
That's them trying to say, hey, look, it's actually Doctor Who, guys.
Dun, dun, dun.
I was trying to figure out why. Last week, I have seen Doctor Who and the Daleks so many times, and I haven't seen this one.
I had the same
So many
reaction
times.
sitting down and watching it for Friday. It was like, I don't remember a
well,
lot of this.
I figured out why I haven't watched this one. It's not as good as the first one. It's not. It's not as good. And I think maybe thinking back, I think maybe my enjoyment of Doctor Who and the Daleks is now because it's so much like the story.
Because it doesn't deviate as much.
When you watch this one, it deviates quite a bit. And what they did in this one worked much better for a film. What they do on TV works so much better for a television series.
Yeah.
However, I just think there's a lot of good aspects of this, and I do enjoy this film, but there's far too much split, which they do this in the series too, but there's far too much of our split the action up among our characters, divide our characters, give them interesting things to do on their own or with their own little teams, the people they meet up with. There's too much in the middle from the big incursion or not incursion,
the resistance.
Insurrection. Yeah, the resistance, and then when we finally get to the mine, there's too much to me padding or drawn out. They try to make it interesting, and I think in some ways they do, but overall I felt like I was getting kind of bored in the adventure to get there. The story to get to the climax seemed to be a little meandering at times.
I could see that after they escape the Dalek ship and Susan's off with what's-his-face and Tom and what's-her-face is in the Dalek ship and getting transported. And I could kind of see that once we got...
David is with the Doctor.
Yeah.
You're wrong. It's a better film than the first one.
Sure, you have something to support that with.
No, not really. That's it for this week. I will give you padding only from the standpoint that Tom's misadventures in the ship, where he becomes a Roboman.
That's fine.
Well, it works.
It's
funny.
It's funny and it's good. I enjoyed that.
But it is padding.
Yeah,
absolutely.
That whole scene, as wonderful as it is, doesn't really need to be there. It serves no purpose to the narrative, and it's padding it out to get to that movie length.
Other than giving them to see the garbage chute to escape. That's the only thing that bit does.
I would rather have that comedy and lifting of brevity in there as padding rather than Susan and the gimpy guy, the guy with the leg, and the guy in the chair who do the failed... Well, the guy in the chair does the failed resistance with the bombs.
Yeah, and then
the Daleks keep coming and sacrifices himself. And the escape in the
which is interesting
truck, which I think was fine. It kind of shows us they got out of the city and they were on their way to the mine. The problem that I have with it, and it's very clever that he realizes to get her and him out of the car, and the blow up, the explosion's really cool. That's good. But that felt like padding. I don't think we needed that. We just needed to know that Susan and he escaped. The other thing is, then they come up against...
They run into Daleks with the truck.
Well, and that was okay. I think
it wasn't even a big truck. It was like a smart car of trucks. Yeah. It was like this.
And compared to how they destroyed it in the actual serial.
I think that's fine, though. Let's have them get in the truck, escape, face the Daleks, and that's how we get away. We run through them. We get that moment. I also think coming across the couple... I mean, there's story building there, and it feels necessary, but it still also feels like padding. The woman and the man and the girl, and they feed them and they help them out, and then when they give them a place to sleep, and then they double cross them to the Daleks. That just felt kind of drawn out too, and it's a moment that I feel like, okay, well, it was needed because it's that deception, but. That could have gone away as well.
That's a moment in the serial that feels like it could have gone away with, too.
The interesting thing about that, though, is I would agree as well. But the thing that I think is interesting, we've got those couple who double-cross the Daleks. We've got the guy that's dressed in a suit for some reason, for crying out loud. The Earth's been invaded and London is in decimation. Why are you still dressing up? I realized that he was making deals with the Daleks, and obviously he was going in and selling things to the miners, and I guess he was some semblance of still having a businessman or a salesman presence. Maybe that was just psychologically it worked. But I almost, that little climactic thing could have been better without having been drawn out so much as well. That being said, I don't think you could have got a full hour and a half out of a film without that stuff, but it just feels like there's a lot of lull in the action, maybe is what the problem with it is. And we do it more for story development and less for keeping me interested in what's going on and the excitement, the Daleks. The Daleks really sort of feel like they're heavy at the beginning and they're heavy at the end, and then there's very little. Maybe that's the problem because I like Daleks so much. There's very little Dalek in the middle, and I don't feel a threat from the Daleks, which I should from a movie called Dalek Invasion Earth. Suddenly, the threat is from the humans that are taking advantage of their situation, and so that to me felt unnecessary. But
see, and I found those things interesting, and it's kind of maybe because of 10 Cloverfield Lane and the tagline of Monsters Take All Forms. I found that interesting, that it's an interesting exploration that even in this alien invasion there is still the humanity that's not uniting and turning against each other.
I would agree with that, and I think that's where they were going with it.
I think that's what they were trying to do.
But it just...
There may have been too much of it for you.
It felt unnecessary at points. But
you missed out on, Daleks Invasion Earth 2150 AD. The invasion already happened.
It did.
It should have been called Daleks Occupation Earth 2150 AD. Then you'd have been okay with this.
Yeah, I think that it's not that I don't think that those parts are good, because they are entertaining, they're enjoyable, and I'm not putting that down. I'm not saying strip all that away and just give me the 2 Dalek parts, because that wouldn't make a good movie. That it would just be... That'd be one episode of a regular Doctor Who. I think the problem I have with it is that then I compare it. I guess it's more of a why I compare the first film is better, because there are moments of action. The pacing of it is so much better. There's a lot more going on. There's more resistance going on. There's things like that, and we don't have to do all of that story development mostly because it's all one location too. We don't have to get from one place to another.
Yeah.
It's all there. It's just a matter of how you get back into it. So I think that's why I enjoy the first one more. I think the first one's more colorful. This one's kind of muted.
I was going to say, this one doesn't have as much of that 60s kitsch romp that the first one has.
Yeah, which I think they try to do, but unfortunately, when you're talking about an invaded Earth, you kind of have to have that post-apocalyptic visual as well. Whereas where you have... Even though it's post-apocalyptic on the planet Skaro, when everything is done in the city and you've got all this bright, shiny mechanical stuff,
alien,
exactly,
it can make it feel
makes
kitschy.
It work better. But I absolutely love Tom on the ship. I think the performances of Tom,
he was absolutely the best.
The Doctor and Susan are all top notch. The guy that Susan was with, and I forget the gentleman's name, but the character's name was phenomenal. I thought the guy, the professor in the wheelchair, was a bit kitsch. Not kitsch. It was a bit, that's the wrong word for it, a bit trite, but it was almost necessary as well. But I didn't think his performance was stellar. I thought David was good for who he was. I felt Louise was just kind of there. That was another problem.
She felt really underused, especially considering, I don't know if you guys rewatched the actual Invasion Earth story before this. Barbara gets so much to do in that compared to what Louise gets nothing. Yeah. And it's just so pale in comparison.
When you had made the comment that, oh wait, is that Barbara? Oh wait, no, it's not Barbara. Who is this person? And I looked at her and went, oh, you're right, that's a different Barbara. Oh, it's not even Barbara. And so then my mind opened the filing cabinet, went back, and I was like, oh right, somebody's got to fall in love with David because Susie's way too young.
And we didn't get that subplot
at all. We didn't get that subplot at all. So I was
the Doctor also didn't go unconscious for like 30 minutes.
I laughed so hard to myself. We're watching this, and I almost tweeted it out. I probably should have. I didn't have time. When one of the opening scenes where Wilf is where Tom's walking along on his beat, and he stops and he looks in the window of the travel agency, and it's a poster for Spain. And I went, the Doctor's on holiday there right now, or will be in about 3 episodes. I don't know why. I don't know if
funny. I didn't even.
I don't know if that was a direct or just a happy, but I giggled.
It's a great place to go vacation.
Is it? Am I misremembering? I thought that it was this one that he had actually gone on. Well, he did. That was, but he had gone. This was in Dalek Invasion Earth was an unscheduled holiday because he had actually injured himself on the set, and so he was recovering.
Was that
that's
what it
why
was?
he went away to Spain because he was on recovery for a week. Interestingly enough, or ironically enough, Peter Cushing was actually injured and had to be sidelined for some time during the making of this film because he was also injured on set. Now, it's not as obvious in this one because you don't go a full half hour without him being there. It's a movie.
Switched to other
films.
He was on holiday while Tom was on the ship.
So, So, interestingly enough, this also had an injury to the Doctor, and it was necessary for him to recuperate before he could continue filming as well.
Does anybody know? I noticed in this, Cushing has this very interesting thing that he does with his hands, with the gloves. He's constantly putting those gloves on, his weird purple knit gloves that looked strangely out of place, but yet still worked with his costume. And like he would sit down, they would fiddle with something, and when he had a prop, he would take them off, and he would do whatever fiddling and checking the map or pencils or glasses or whatever he was doing. And as soon as he was done, the gloves went back on. And I just thought, I don't know why I noticed it. I just thought it was a really interesting character tick, or maybe his hands were cold.
I think that's the impression that I got, was it was because it was a cold climate or a cold day or something, because he doesn't put the gloves on until he and Dave are about to leave. And clearly they're going to wherever the mine was. I can't remember. They said the name of the town nearby. But he puts the gloves on there. And he only takes off and puts on the gloves when they're out. Like when they're in the cabin, he does that, but the cabin obviously wouldn't have been heated very well.
But then
so
later,
it's not like when he got in the ship, he kept taking the gloves off on and off.
But he did.
Once he's in the ship, he takes the gloves off the one time, and he actually puts them in his coat.
Right,
and
but
he doesn't have the gloves on the whole time
at
from that point on.
When he meets back up with the injured guy who saved Susan.
Yeah.
And at the mine site, but they're indoors, not in the cabin, but they're indoors. And he had just taken them off, put them back on when he went outside at the cabin.
Right.
When he gets captured.
Right.
And then he gets inside and meets them inside the mine or wherever they're at. He takes them off to shake the guy's hand.
But he's still in the elements, though. They're still in the mine. It's obviously still going to be cold. My point is, my point is that to me, that
it looked
that
like
was
an
just
interior. But
anytime he's going outdoors, he's dressing for the occasion. So I guess it didn't.
Did you really just go there?
I didn't say dressing. It did occur to me that he was taking the gloves off and putting them on, but it never seemed out of character or out of place for where he was. No. So if he had continued to do that at the beginning or on the ship, then I would have thought that was a weird.
Maybe it was just
quirk.
cold then.
Yeah, that's what I chalk it up to, because it would have been a weird character quirk had he had continued to do that when he was out of the elements. But every time that he did it, I just thought, it's cold out.
Okay.
I mean, the guy was wearing a trench coat that ambushed him, for crying out loud, that was going to take him into the mine and then double-crossed him. And then got his comeuppance.
That's the greatest scene in the world, when the Doctor marches off. And the guy stands there for a minute, looks at all the Daleks, and then just darts back inside, locks the door, and then kind of looks around like, huh.
The ship looked good.
The ship looked amazing.
Fantastic model. I unfortunately could see the strings from the crane, but it was.
There was no crane. It was there 60s. Were no strings.
Yeah, there was definitely strings.
No, they built that full scale and it flies.
In that one shot, there was definitely the. But overall, I thought the effects were good. I'm glad that they went with the fire extinguisher look again, because I think you could. It works just enough that you don't have to put an effect in there, but you still understand that that's a blast that's going to explode, cause an explosion or cause somebody.
And it's really neat when the wheelchair guy gets surrounded and just smoke covers him, and you don't get to see him anymore. It's a really effective tool.
It's a very effective tool to kind of cushion the violence for kids as well that are obviously a target for this film, because it was right in the height of Dalek mania.
And we got lots of exterminates in this one.
Yeah, finally.
Much better cadence to the speech, I thought.
Higher pitched,
as
Keith
a bit more like
pointed out.
Series. Daleks.
And I wonder if that was intentional. In fact, I had forgotten last week attributing a lot of stuff to Terry Nation, and I can't believe I forgot to bring this up because I noticed it last week. The screenplay for both of these films are written by different people. They're not Terry Nation. They're adapted from Terry Nation's scripts. Interestingly enough, and I can't remember the specific screenwriters for each one, but did you guys know, we'll obviously talk about some of the...
Milton Subtosky wrote the screenplay for this.
For this one. With contributions by David Whittaker. And David Whittaker was the one that he's credited in the credits.
Who did you say the first one? Or
he wrote the screen. That guy is credited
Milton
as
Subtosky. He was
He
also
did
a
both.
producer.
Okay, so David Whittaker actually helped with the story on this one, and it is the David Whittaker who was the story editor at the time of Daleks Invasion Earth on television. And also one of our favorite novels that we've read. He wrote Doctor Who and the Crusaders, and also wrote the television story for that as well. And that is the same David Whittaker that was a part of that.
See, now I really want to delve into these and find out. Not that David Whittaker is not deserving of much praise, as we've established. We enjoy his stuff, but I almost wonder if his role was, how do I want to put this, watchdog style. Knowing that they were adapting these with BBC's blessing to a certain extent, that they were okay with them doing this, but maybe it was one of his jobs was to say, well, you can't use him as a Time Lord. He has to be from Earth, or you can't do. I wonder if that maybe has a part of it. I really want to delve more into these now. And
we should look more into it. I suspect it's
speculation at this point. I don't know.
I suspect it was a David Whittaker was done on Doctor Who.
He did not get any credit on Doctor Who and the Daleks.
Yeah, he was not part of that. He contributed to this one specifically. He did not contribute to the first one.
To the second one specifically.
To Dalek Invasion Earth. This is what I suspect is he probably was not attached to Doctor Who anymore, and the production crew or the producers of this must have asked him to come along as a consultant to maybe kind of make it feel a little more like the series.
Yeah, and
I don't think it was the BBC transferring it over there to make sure that things were in line. I think it was the people producing it saying, we should have David Whittaker on our team because he's familiar with these characters, I think is what it was. And we can kind of give it that feel that made it popular on the TV series, I think is what they were looking for, if I were to presume.
Because there were subtle changes, the TARDIS interior, less...
Yeah.
dangly bits hanging from the ceiling and much more computer banks.
Yeah, it's a few years later, so he's had time to do some work.
Yeah.
Well, he realized what a dumb design flaw that
lever was.
That giant handle in the middle of the room. Where somebody could trip on that, and well, we're going to get rid of that.
I presume he saw the adaptation of the story in the comic that we reviewed last week and went, "Oh, that's a better idea," and he changed it appropriately to that. I thought the outside of the TARDIS, though, looked remarkably different. The top looks different than the first one.
I think this one is... for all the things that you said last week about the first one and being kitsch and fun and 60s and colorful, and you're 100% right. It's all great.
This one has those elements, but lacks too much of it, I think is the problem.
This one is toned down.
Yeah.
It still has all those elements, but it's toned down a little bit, and maybe that's why I like it better, because it feels a little more.
Well, it does feel. It feels a little more. It feels a little more, and it feels a little more theatrical as well. To me, it makes it feel more theatrical, and part of that might have been because I think this one the stakes are a lot higher, and they are in the series as well. But I think the stakes are much higher in this one, so I think that's why that's dialed down a bit, and I think that's why that's kind of pulled out, stretched out a little bit.
Because if you did this story in the style of the first one, I don't think it would work as well because you're fighting with those. We've got these stakes, but yet it's bright and colorful, and those two elements wouldn't. They're too desperate to go together.
Because Dalek Invasion Earth, for a lot of Britons, invoked that Nazi invasion idea.
Oh, yeah.
And these are the Nazis that succeeded in invading. And so, if you did the fun comic romp that the first one has a lot more of, in the film, that was still only 20 years ago that they had gone through that. So I think you had to kind of bring that down to a level so that it didn't feel like they were playing too fast and loose with the connections that it has to Nazi Germany.
I think it's a better film, but not as fun to watch.
Yeah, that's maybe a good way of putting it.
I would agree with that. I don't know that it's a better film, but I would agree it's not as fun to watch. I think it's as good a film. I think the first one is more enjoyable. Maybe that's what it boils down to. I think it's as good. I think the production is as good. I think the performances are as good. I think the story is as strong. But the thing is, when you're comparing it to something that was already material, you can't really say, wow, what a great story, when you already said, wow, what a great story when you reviewed it, as a television series. So I think production-wise, it's done better. I think it just, I don't know.
The climax doesn't quite work for me on both instances. The idea of stopping this bomb somehow destroys all of the Daleks everywhere. Doesn't quite work for me. Or at least the ones in the area. It's
cool.
That's great action, but it stretches my logic a little too far.
Let me put it this way: that is an issue that I had with Daleks Invasion Earth on the TV series because it gave me impression that the Daleks had invaded everywhere.
Yes.
The thing that the movie does well is it really never gives you it gives me the impression that this is the same group of Daleks that destroyed all of London. That this wasn't a widespread.
There's several Earth-wide invasion.
It is one faction of Daleks that have basically they've invaded Earth, and the idea is they don't have to invade the rest of the Earth because they have found this one weaknesses, and they're going to take the Earth away anyway. So it doesn't matter what anybody does. Everybody else is going to, die and perish in the meantime when they take this planet.
I didn't get that from the movie, but it helps fix
it.
In
a battlefield Earth way, maybe there were lots of Dalek forces. We decimated the planet, and these were the guys that were left, and everybody else went back home.
I don't think you even have to presume that, because the movie just shows you the one ship. And that's it. Yeah, that's why this works for me this time, because it is a localized event somewhat. And I thought that this movie, and I going back and having read now, because I did go back to refresh my memory. I didn't watch it, but I did refresh my memory on it. It is a little more clear now to me. This movie makes it clear as to why it works the way that it does, better than the TV series I thought did, in the fact that it had to go to a certain point, and they were using the humans in order to dig down there because of the magnetism, and by detonating the bomb too soon, created the magnetism that would pull the Daleks in.
Yeah.
Now, I think it's a little too comic in the movie when the Daleks are going, and crashing through walls.
The only thing missing was the Benny Hill theme.
Yeah. That doesn't work for me as well. But the bomb aspect of it, the science of it, I think is soft-sold in this one better than it is in the
it's sound series. Enough, I'll be like, all right.
Yeah, exactly.
And you're like,
was it the movie that had the shoot that they tried that they redirected it with?
Remember that in I don't
think
remember
they did it both ways. I think it was in both.
I didn't remember it in the series well enough, but I
thought it seemed like that last act was vastly different from the series. Like the same ideas were there, but how they went about it were
right. I think you're right. Different. Yes, I think you're right.
Of course, a large chunk of that last act is Susan and David. So
and the departure and everything like that as well. But
that takes up like 10 minutes of the episode.
Bottom line, this is why this one is superior. There's no chasm.
The chasm was only 4.5 minutes of the first film, though. Interestingly enough, though, this one tanked at the box office. It did not do as well as Doctor Who, and in fact, they had a third film planned, and it would have been based on The Chase from the TV series.
I can't see how that would have worked as well.
I think what they would have done...
Although it would have been a lot of fun.
They probably would have drilled it down to aspects. It probably would have been...
Well, it was going to be versus the mechanoids, right?
Yes. So that would have been the climactic aspect of it. And I think they probably would have used the first part of it, which was the planet that were subterranean. Because they had been driven underground.
So no Frankenstein?
No Frankenstein, probably. They probably would have cut that
That would have been the great kitschy moment
journey
of
the
it.
Terror out and everything like that.
That would have been a great 60s
Whoa.
They probably would not have landed on the top of the...
Hang on. Peter Cushing as Doctor Who facing off against Frankenstein and Dracula, and they weren't going to do that?
Yeah. I think they would have left that out. They probably would have taken out the
Put
Empire.
him in too many rights issues to try to deal with.
They probably would have taken out the Empire State Building, but I think they might have included the Mary Celeste part of it as well to give it a 3-act chase.
Yeah.
House of Doctor Who. I think we need to write this film now, Glenn.
Yeah, that'd be fun.
And always refer to him as Doctor Who.
And we could
always
cast.
refer
We
to him
could
as
cast Peter Cushing. Oh,
Oh, now I'm sad.
what else do you guys like?
I liked Wilf.
Yeah,
He really is the standout part of this film.
And not just because...
Hey, man, Cushing's really enjoyable, too.
Not just because he's Wilf. I mean, yeah, he's Grandpa Wilf, but he's Bernard Cribbins. He's so wonderful in everything he does in this. Is just delightful. His bigger on the inside moment. His getting conked on the head. His kind of acceptance with just rolling with it, and going, all right, and still being a police officer, there's danger, and grabbing Susie and getting her out of the way, and I mean, just step by step, he's just great. And of course he has the great comedic moments, but then he's also the one doing the heavy lifting. He's the man of action in this one, so he gets to go down, and he kind of has the best of both worlds in a way, whereas Ian in the first one was kind of just used for the comic relief.
He's the comic relief, and then,
until the end.
He's kind of the accidental hero, is what he is, whereas Tom is more of a deliberate hero.
Right.
He gets the comedic moments, but he also is deliberately the hero, action hero.
And you're right, Peter Cushing is great. Philip Maddock, as soon as you said that, I went, oh, wow, it is. And I got very excited for no reason.
So this would have been pre all of his Doctor Who stuff.
Well, this would have all been pre Wilf's stuff too.
Yes.
So.
Both things.
They're just delightful fun. They just really are. And then you get to the end, and like I said on Friday Night Who that it's like Planet of the Apes in a Bond film, and that really is kind of both of these films remind me just in tone of some of the later Planet of the Apes films. They don't have the same weight that the first one has, but they're just fun to watch. And you get to the end and they drop the bomb and it kind of rolls off on its own little, with a weird egg-shaped wobble to it as it goes down the thing.
I think that's the most apt descriptor of it is James Bond meets Planet of the Apes. Is really, really a good descriptor of the mood and the tone of these films. I think that's a real good, with maybe a little bit of Casino Royale is the one that pops into my head. Or
I could see that.
Or, those kind of comedic ones.
And very satisfying watching Daleks fall down holes.
Actually, it didn't bother me the first several times I've seen the film. This time it pained me. And I think it was because I was looking at it as, oh, look at all those Dalek replicas being destroyed.
Look at all those gorgeous props that are...
Not that I would buy one because I can't afford one.
1/3 of £2,000.
They haven't destroyed the Dalek Sec one, so...
And when it goes over and knocks the little earpieces off, and they're clattering around on the floor.
That's what
the destruction was pretty impressive.
Not going through the wall. They go king, and it
somebody's
falls
have to glue those back on before they put them in a museum. Is there anything else about this you guys want to chat about?
I think we hit all the main points for me.
All right, well...
Thoroughly enjoyable. I'm glad we did this. And happy 50th anniversary.
Yeah, happy 50th anniversary.
Daleks Invasion Earth 2150 AD. And I think we should have a contest. I think you should go and watch the trailer and see and count how many times they say 2150 AD in the trailer.
Is that what you were getting to?
Oh, man, it was every other word.
2150 AD. In 2150 AD.
Somewhere there's a ding counter going off on this.
If you're
the guy came, did you say 2150 AD in the trailer? Yeah, I said it. Are you sure? I don't think you quite got the point across that this is the future. We don't want to spook anybody. That's I said it. Okay.
If you're not already supporting us on Patreon, please consider doing so. All of that money goes right back into the show. If you are already a Patreon supporter, we thank you very much for that. And there's also some sites that you can visit on our website, travelingvortex.com, that also generate a little bit of revenues for these shows. So please click through those links as well.
And don't wait for the year 2150 AD.
If you can find us on various social media platforms, please do that as well. And you can find us. Where can they find us, Keith?
We are on Facebook, Traveling the Vortex. We are at Twitter, at Travel Vortex. The Goodreads Book Club, as we mentioned. You can always send us feedback at travelingthevortex.com, or go to our website, travelingthevortex.com, and fill out the Send Us Feedback tab, and that will be sent directly to us.
All right. Is that going to do it for this week?
Just a note on the schedule next week. We have
what do we come up on the schedule?
Greatest Show in the Galaxy for Friday Night Who, so some more kitsch in the form of Sylvester McCoy. And then we'll be reviewing some Candy Jar stuff. We've got some goodness. The Band of Evil and Lethbridge Tour, the Showstoppers. So the short and the new novel. And we will be reviewing those.
All right. Now, is there anything else left to talk about since I almost skipped the schedule this week?
No.
All right. If that's going to do it for this week, until next week, I'm Glenn.
I'm Sean.
I'm Keith.
Cheers.
Good night, everybody.
Be seeing you.
You have been listening to Traveling the Vortex. Doctor Who and all of its associated programs are owned and trademarked by the BBC. No infringement is intended or implied.